recommendation being put forward to hold the elections in February next year. Justice Dikgang Moseneke chaired that inquiry into the feasibility of holding local government elections amid a pandemic. And he says if voting was to happen in October this year, it would not be free and fair. eNCA's Heidi Giokos has been following this story for us and listening to that briefing and joins us now live. Heidi, a lot of people responding and saying they're not really surprised by this recommendation by the Justice Dikgang Moseneke, given how we haven't really vaccinated enough people for community immunity.
Yes, certainly, Clemens, and I think this is a huge report, over 300 pages that is sitting on the IEC's desk. They need to consider whether or not it's going to be conducive enough to hold local government elections in October, given the fact that former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke is saying that the environment is not conducive enough and to hold elections in October will not be free and fair. But we are joined by Mamabolo, the Chief Electoral Officer. Thanks so much, Mr. Sai, for your time.
Thank you.
Let's just start off with the fact that the report is not binding, but it does recommend the fact that the IEC, the fact that local government elections should not be held in October, given the pandemic and given the factors at play. Speak to us about the IEC's initial response to this.
Well, we see the report as a master act of constitutional engagement. I think it gives guidance on the new standards which are to apply to a free and fair election in a COVID context. So the Commission indeed welcomes the report. They will deliberate on it, and in the not too distant future they'll come out and indicate the steps that they'll be taking based on the considerations arising from the report.
We do know that the report recommends that local government elections, if deferred, should not be deferred no later than February 2022. You do not have much time, given that we are at the end of July. What time frame are you looking at? I know you can't go into specifics of that, but you actually don't have much time.
Certainly, time is still not on our side. I don't anticipate that the Commission will take more than the last 3 days left in the week before they come out and address the nation on the steps that they will be taking.
And then just speak to us about the consequences, possibly, of having local government elections, especially in October or thereafter, given the uncertainty that comes with COVID-19 and resurgence in cases. When you look at other countries that went ahead with elections, there was a huge resurgence in cases, and the advice in the report says, lives will be lost because people will gather, and given our vaccination rates, it doesn't look too good.
Yes, I think when one hears the Justice speak, he indicates that we are better off with an election 4 months later, because at that point the level of vaccination would have been significant and probably would have hit community immunity. So when you hit population immunity, you are likely to have situations of infection, but with less mortality and less hospitalization. In other words, the severity of the infections won't be as grave as they would be had we have to proceed with the election in October. That's really the important difference in October and February, and that determination is based on the presentation by medical experts.
And then just lastly, Sai, speak to us about the next steps. Should the IEC decide to defer local government elections, what are the next steps that the IEC needs to take? Does this need to go to the Constitutional Court?
Yes, there were two options, but one is not a viable option at this point, and that would have been a constitutional amendment. It's not advisable because you can't amend the Constitution for a short-term problem. So the other option that is left open to us is an immediate approach to the Constitutional Court for an extraordinary remedy, I must say, which will be for as short a period as is possible to ensure that we stave off possible infection of people.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for your time and good luck. I think you have a lot on your plate right now. There you have it, Clemens. I think there's a lot that sits on the IEC at the moment to try and figure out what they are going to do, whether or not they are going to defer local government elections, as the report recommends by former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke. And Clemens, I must just add that the report speaks to how dangerous it is, especially for countries that have not vaccinated, that still have a very high number of COVID-19 cases, and countries that did proceed with local government elections, the devastation that occurred thereafter. So hopefully the IEC will come back as soon as possible on their decision, and whether or not they will be heading to the constitutional courts to defer local government elections.